To the US now, and in perhaps the biggest confirmation that most pollsters are absolutely pathetic at their jobs. Today we learned from one of Harris's main campaign guys that their internal polling actually never showed Harris out front of Trump in any way, shape or form. Check it out. Hear it from him. Here he is talking to Pod Save America podcast. You can hear it from the horse's mouth.
When we got in, my recollection is some of that snapped back, but we were behind. I mean, I think it surprised people because there was these public polls that came out in late September, early October, showing us with leads that we never saw. I think even after the debate, we might have gained, 0.51. It wasn't a race that moved a lot. You've got to have undecided to break your way more than your opponents, and you've got to get a little benefit from turnout, which we weren't able to do.
Thank you, David Plouffe. So how was it that the public polls, which he made reference to there, were so out of step with their own internal polling, whereby they knew there was more than one other guy on their campaign who joined him on that podcast, and they said, look, we actually knew it was a lost cause, which begs the question, had everyone known it was a lost cause, do you think Harris would have had $1 billion to incinerate? I think not. Can you imagine being one of her donors right now and learning that these guys always knew that it was a jolly lost cause? Check out this graphic of just how out of touch the average pollster was with what was actually going on behind the scenes in the Harris camp. In the right-hand column there, you can see how badly the end result deviated from what they projected was going to happen. This is an absolute embarrassment. And we had David Plouffe there saying that it didn't even change much after she took after Dementia Joe. Now, we were told, Harris is at the wheel now. She actually did really well during the debate. Don't you think that was amazing? She's doing incredibly. The Trump camp should be worried. She's actually skyrocketing in popularity. And we all said, maybe it's just a honeymoon period. She's just taken over from Joe. She didn't actually crash and burn in the debate as we were expecting. And we just thought, she's got a bit of a pump in the polls. Maybe this will be tighter than we thought. Turns out it was all a nonsense. So much for suppression polls being a conspiracy theory. Another great day to be a conspiracy theorist.
Well, this is private internal party polling. They're not going to make it public. They never do, never have, never will.
Well, they just did.
Otherwise, what's the point? After the fact, but they're not going to do it during the actual election campaign.
No, of course not.
That's the whole point of having your own internal pollster. And then you've got the public polls. If you actually looked at the public polls throughout the entire campaign, as I was doing obsessively, they showed pretty much the same thing. He was talking here mostly about the battleground states, which of course are the ones that matter. That's right. And there's about 7 of those that really matters, Pennsylvania being the most important, but, Wisconsin, Michigan, and a handful of others, Georgia, Arizona, those sorts of things. If you actually looked at them, if you looked at the average of polls that Real Clear Politics or 538 puts up all the time, Trump was marginally ahead, a tiny bit ahead, in most of those most of the time.
And that's why kept it pretty 50-50.
And that's why you saw no, Trump was mostly ahead
most of the time.
And Paul Murray, was constantly drawing attention to this fact. And it was a white knuckle ride, but Trump won by much, much, much more than those polls predicted. So those polls still got it wrong. But this is what I found really strange, was that even when, I think I mentioned it on my podcast, The Real Story with Joe Hildebrand, download it now, which is that the gaslighting, and this is what makes it even worse, the obsession of, say, the MSNBC types or the CNN types, or we had certain, Twitterati here, saying, I predict it's going to be Kamala by this and that. We saw the ridiculous Iowa poll. But it was right there in front of their faces. This wasn't even in 2016 where everyone's saying, it's definitely Hillary Clinton, it's all over, bar the shouting. The polls were still showing it was incredibly close. The battleground states edged towards Trump more than Harris the vast majority of the time. And the betting market had Trump pretty much, 55, 45.
So how do you account for the whole disparity?
Because
between the internal polling and all the other polling.
Well, no, this is what I'm saying, though. Their internal polling actually matches up pretty well with the public polling. What neither matches up with is the result, and neither matches up with the commentary of people who thought
that wasn't what he was saying,
Kamala
though.
was
He
going
said
to
the
win.
public polls had us ahead, and we never saw that in our internal polling.
That's right.
We didn't even
He
see
said that we were always behind the battleground
crowed
state.
about post-debate.
Well, there was that
famous one in Iowa, right?
Poll.
Right.
That was
Where,
attention. And that
she was
pollster,
tipped to win.
that pollster has actually resigned. That showed something like a 10 to 15 point turnaround. It was absolutely bonkers, right? So that was some weird, crazy anomaly, and that should have just been put on the scrap heap and just burned alive, because that was clearly just a crazy, crazy outlier. And yeah, maybe the public polls, I think, were probably a bit more favourable to Kamala, because I think a lot of Trump voters were gaming the polls and just not answering. And there was some anecdotal evidence after that. So they hear a pollster, they say, no, F you, I'm not talking to you, don't trust you, you're part of the system.
Yeah, but they don't
And these are skeptical
explain
people.
that. People are watching these polls unfold on MSNBC, CNN, etc.
But what I'm saying is, even
all
those
this false hope.
But even those. But even the polls, if you actually look at them, weren't giving them false hope. You had people talking about them, saying talking about Kamala momentum.
The guys who across
Talking about-
the internal polling clearly disagree with you, Joe. So
No,
you
no,
just say no, it's
they
kind of
privately
even
knew.
Steven.
No, they privately knew that things were not going as well as all Kamala Harris's cheerleaders were saying they were going. That is exactly what I'm trying to tell you. That you had people who were so blinded, who were so completely dissociated from the possibility that Donald Trump could actually win, that they were talking about Kamala Harris having this rollicking campaign, having all this famous Kamala momentum and being ahead and going to win, when even the public polls that were published were saying, in most cases, the opposite of that. That is how deluded they were. So again, it wasn't like Hillary Clinton in 2016, where they were following what the polls were actually telling them.